It's on purpose.
Oh, of course. Good morning.
Where's the on?
Oh, what, the battery's
Where's that
separate?
on?
Do you just plug them in, or do you have to turn it on after you plug the battery in?
But it should be just that.
Oh, my battery is fully charged.
Okay, good job.
Yeah, that shows that the battery is full. My battery is full. Oh, this battery is full. Oh, this is the on button right over here. There you go. You see the on button right over here. It's at the right underneath the speak button. Right there, you'll see one. You see it? It's a small button. Because all the batteries, if you press this button here, it just shows you to get up the battery. There you go. No, top left. Up and to the left, right there.
All set.
That's the one thing or bad thing that I found about it. Oh, okay. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
Yeah.
Not? Okay, that seems to work. It's not this one, I'm sorry.
We're connected. Hey.
Do we have one working over there?
I think so.
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Okay, excellent.
Okay. We are working. Are there water bottles and snacks? I thought that was.
Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Wilbraham Regional School Committee. To begin the meeting, I will call the roll. Michelle Boudreau.
Here.
Tim Collins.
Present.
Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Bill Metzger.
Here.
Lisa Murray.
Here.
Rich Rediker.
Here.
Michael Terabasi.
Here.
Okay. Josh, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I see that Wilbraham Public Access is recording this meeting. Is anyone else here recording the meeting? Okay. Our first order of business is the reorganization of the school committee, and the first item under that is the election of a chair. So I'll open the floor for nominations.
I nominate Michelle Boudreau.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
Take a nomination. Or I'll nominate myself.
Okay. Any other nominations? Going once, going twice. Okay, closing the floor for nominations. We will give the candidates some time to deliver their campaign speeches in alphabetical order, starting with Michelle Boudreau.
So I appreciate the nomination, considering me for another term as chair. It's been a privilege to serve in this role. I try to lead with one principle. The chair serves the committee. I run our meetings, but I have one vote, same as everyone else. Over the past year, this committee completed the superintendent evaluation cycle, worked through changes to the regional agreement, negotiated contracts with 4 bargaining units, updated several policies, and after real debate, shifted our NSBA application from the accelerated repair program to the core program. That work continues tonight with our vote on the final draft of the regional agreement amendment. Looking ahead, we're looking at finalizing Unit C contracts, possible acceptance in the core program, another budget cycle, and our next strategic plan. I don't expect anyone to vote based solely on what I say tonight. Look at how I've run meetings, how I've treated every member of this committee, whether I've been straight with you. If that's earned a vote, I'd like to continue as chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Mr. King.
I'm passing around this, if you can all just take one and pass them around. So rather than say anything against the person, Michelle did a great job, you know, in these trying times, but I just have some things I'd like to do differently. I agree with Michelle that I believe that the chair should be a servant role where we serve the rest of the members of the committee. I have reached out to several people from Hamden and Wilbraham this summer and sat down and had talks when available, phone calls when not available, and basically I'm trying to find a way to be really effective and transparent beyond what we have traditionally been. The first is, on my thing, is being there, not just being here. And being there means have a rotation where we go to begin this year. We will have at least one school committee member at every select board meeting from both towns. This way that we can cycle in, we can develop personal relationships with the select board members, as well as hear the stuff that's not about what's going on in the towns, but you know, what will have an effect on us as a school committee when it comes to budgets. And I try to be very detailed in there about this, and you know, this would be something that would require more time. But if you look at it, if we start this year with this calendar year by going to 2 select board meetings from both towns, whether they're every other week or every week, whatever it is, we just rotate it through. I think it'll be a lot less painful than it might first appear. And then the idea is in January to switch it over to finance and advisory, where we will start going to finance and advisory meetings rather than the select board meeting. I'd like to do both, but until we see the results of this working, I think we're going to split it. This is what I'd like to do, and just have it so that we're with where they are. So if they have a question or they have an issue, then we can address it. I don't know, I think everyone's seen the email sent by Hamden Select Board asking us, you know, what's going on with Unit C, you know, why haven't we, you know, finished or come to an agreement on that. And Don Davenport brought this up when I was meeting with him, and he just had no idea what was going on, right? There was, you know, he had a question, so he sent a letter to get an answer. Wouldn't it be great if we had someone at his meetings so that he could have, or if we heard them say, hey, geez, what's going on, and we could raise our hand and, you know, you can say something that's been said at a meeting, that's been said publicly. You know, we have met, we came to an agreement, the union didn't pass it, so we've been negotiating with them, and we're not meeting over the summer, but we will continue it, you know, in September. You know, share that information. The second thing I want to do is share the chairs. Okay, we have basically 7, I guess, call them committee/subcommittee part of this committee. We have 6 subcommittees, and then we have one, was it planning, right? And that's a committee, right? So what we would do is we would have it so that everyone gets a chance to chair a committee. No one can chair more than one committee. If you look at it, like last year, every committee was chaired by either Michelle or Dr. Garabasi, and then one was chaired by Lisa. So, I mean, that's 3 people out of 7 that are chairing, you know, different committees, and I think it's better if we all, you know, share in that. As a way of sharing the responsibilities as well as sharing the workload. I would say that whoever is the chair wouldn't be able to serve as chair except for the planning committee, and that would be 7. If we add another subcommittee, let's say we add a AI subcommittee or something like that, then there's a possibility that someone would have 2.
And if there are, say, 3 members of a subcommittee and they're already chairs of another committee, then they can either vote to have no chair, or they can vote that one of them would be the chair, and there would be a time when someone might have 2. I put it all down there. And then I had some other just generic ideas of things that we can do. Some things that we have done before, but some things that I think would be at least worth having a conversation about. Really getting more involved in the community and giving the community more a part of what happens, in our meetings as well. So I put this out there and to say that there's a lot of things going on. We hope to have the regional agreement draft done, but I reached out and I've been talking to different members of finance and such like that, and capital, and they said we have to go to them and get their buy-in as well, and as well as advisory, just because the select board agrees to it, but we got to make sure that we get the other committees in the towns on board as well. So though we do have a path through with them, I think it's also good to share this information and meet with those subcommittees as well, so that we have full buy-in from everybody, which is really what I'm trying to do right now. We have a reputation that I think we need to change, and I think we need to do that by, like I said, being there, not just being here. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Great, thank you.
Be allowed to have discussion.
I guess
No.
I think it's just to hear from the candidates and then vote. And then if the vote fails, then typically there's a discussion about whether other candidates come forward.
Okay. So, all right.
Thanks, Josh.
So I would ask Senator Bell if you could just mark the name of the candidates who would be your preference for chair, and then Josh will come and pick those up. The winner is Michelle. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Michelle.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we will continue with the election of the vice chair, so I will open up the floor to nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Michael for vice chair.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
I'll put in a nomination for myself.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, so we will continue with statements from each of the nominees, and we'll do that in alphabetical order. So Sean, we'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. So I have been the vice chair under, 3 or 4 different school committee chairs before. I still have these things which I would like to, get voted on or hopefully integrated into what we do so that we can be more effective and transparent. And in case Michelle is not able to serve, then I would fill in for whatever day she wouldn't be there. Thank you.
So I served as vice chair for the first time this past year. It's interesting, at the start of the year, I kind of thought to myself, well, gee whiz, what does the vice chair do? Much of a role, and it's kind of funny as time goes on, you kind of, it's funny how, I always like to say to people there's no substitution for experience, right? And you kind of learn, and I think that after spending a year as vice chair, I think the role is important. I've worked with Michelle a number of times, helping with the agenda for the meetings. I took the prerogative as vice chair to open lines of communication with the two town select boards, which culminated in, with the committee's support, letters of support for our application to the core building program. I enjoyed the role, and so I would be happy to serve again. And I'd like to say, to the sheet you have shown here, I think you're pointing out a lot of really great things that would be good to have a dialogue to discuss. But I think it's also important to understand the roles of people on the committee, and like the chair of the committee, vice chair of the committee, has no authority whatsoever to deal with any of this. All of us as a committee, we discuss and we vote on what subcommittees we go to. Various people serve on. We look for people to be willing to be nominated to them, right? Because we want people on the subcommittees to put in the time that's needed, and then the subcommittees decide who chairs there. Sean pointed out this equity that he felt, which was not inaccurate in what he reported, but it is what was decided by the committee and the various subcommittees. So I think it's important to respect the process and the roles of the people. And so while I think that this is great and it's important to open up a dialogue with this kind of stuff, I also respect the fact that the chair and the vice chair really don't have any authority to deal with this. They really have no authority whatsoever. It's only when we're all here together, right, that we have any. So, thank you guys.
Okay, thank you. So we will pass these ballots out. Congratulations, Mike. You are the vice chair.
Congratulations.
So we will continue with the election of the secretary. So I open the floor for nominations for secretary.
I nominate Lisa for secretary. You can refuse the nomination.
Are there any other nominations for secretary? Are there any other nominations? Okay, well, congratulations, Lisa. You are secretary. And then we'll continue with the election of treasurer, which is Sabrina Loftus. Is anyone opposed to that? She works in central office, and she's been the past treasurer as well. Okay, so congratulations to Sabrina on being elected the treasurer again. So now we will move on to the subcommittee assignments. Okay, so what we will do is we'll go through each of the subcommittees and I'll read the description. And then just by a show of hands, if you want to express interest. So most of the subcommittees, there are 3 people. Usually it's 2 representatives from Wilbraham and 1 in Hamden. So we'll start with, we already have the audit committee, which is Doug. So the audit is the initial review of the annual audit, makes recommendations to the school committee on acceptance and directions. So that is Doug, it's already been assigned to him. So the next will be finance and operations, responsible for recommending direction, strategies, and priorities to the full school committee. Initial review of annual school budget, works closely with the town boards to discuss HWRSC assessment. Technology, responsible, and this is also it's finance, operations, and technology. The technology piece is responsible for recommending direction, strategies, and action plans surrounding district technology planning and development. So the meetings typically, I mean, this is subject to change, but I'd say we're most active November to June. We meet very frequently, December to April. And the meeting schedule will be to be determined. Okay. Do we have?
Yeah, I've been on this committee for 10 years, so I'd like to continue being on it.
Rich?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm interested.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay, so it's easy. So we have Rich, Sean, and Mike. Thank you. We'll move on to curriculum. Provides initial review and recommendation on new or substantially revised curriculum. Reviews reports from the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning on the status of curriculum development and changes that are to be implemented in previously approved curricula. The meetings are scheduled as needed.
I'm interested in being on.
Okay.
I'll do it again.
Okay.
As long as Lisa's on.
Oh,
So it's easy. Unless you want to be on the show.
I'll do whatever you're not interested in.
You got it again.
Okay. Thank you. So is anyone else interested? Okay, so we have Bill, Lisa, and Rich. Okay, so we have the LPVEC Collaborative Representative. So this is as a member of the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative. HWRSC works with neighboring districts in development and operation of high-quality, cost-effective education-related services in the areas including special education, vocational technical education programs, and transportation. The school committee representative reviews the LPVEC strategic goals, the LPVEC budget, and the associated assessment to HWRSC. And those meetings are monthly, and I believe they're on site in West Springfield at the collaborative.
I would just ask everybody if I could still be on it because my June meeting was the restructuring and I'm the vice chair.
Okay,
Second.
great. So that will be Lisa. Thank you. So we'll move to the LPVEC Corporation representative. So the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Corporation was organized in 1981 and is a separate organizational entity from the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative. The corporation has a separate board of directors who have separate meetings and generally maintaining a separate financial system. The current utilization of the LPVEC is the holding of title to real estate to be used for educational purposes by LPVEC and or the member school districts. So those meetings are monthly, but not really. They're more like quarterly.
It's quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Is anyone interested in that?
They're nice and short.
Yes.
It's a good way to meet people from.
Do you know what day of the week the meetings are?
I have a schedule that I can share with you, and it includes, but it's like 3 or 4 times a year.
Is it Wednesdays?
It's Wednesdays.
Usually Wednesdays,
Mhm.
which is why I didn't pipe up because for me to be off Thursdays, I'm off. Put on
But it's like 3 times for the whole school year.
And the meetings are really short.
I'm interested.
Okay.
Oh, great.
And you're welcome to stay. Actually, so the corporation typically meets before the collaborative, so if you're already there, sometimes you're able to stay and you can be a part of, and not necessarily be a voting member, but you can certainly participate in the collaborative meeting. Okay, so that would be Bill. Thank you. So we'll move on to the MASC, MASS conference rep. So it represents the school committee at all annual fall conference to vote on the resolutions brought before the members. All school committee members can attend the conference.
I nominate Sean for this.
Yeah, I've done it in the past just because it's worked out okay. So, and all I do is ask us how you want me to vote, and that's how I go and vote.
Okay, is anyone else interested? Okay, so Sean will be the MASC rep. So we will move on to negotiations, responsible for developing and recommending negotiation strategy for unionized staff. So those meetings are frequently during negotiations.
Yeah, I'm interested as well. I've been on it since I've been on this committee. Tim's been on it since he's been on the committee.
And Matt would like to stay in negotiations.
Sure.
Okay, so that is set. So then that is Tim, Sean, and myself. So then we have policy. Provides initial review and makes recommendations on new policies. Responsible for ongoing review and revision of HWRC policy manual. So those meetings are currently, there's monthly.
I'll be on it again. If Rich is on it.
Yeah, okay. So we have Mike, Rich, and Tim. Okay, so then we have the Scantic Valley Regional Health Trust. Okay, so that we already have somebody for that. Doug and Christina are responsible for representing the district as an alternate to the primary board member, which is the assistant superintendent for business, in joint negotiations and purchase of the health and life insurance coverages. So those meetings are monthly during the school year.
I believe that we always had a school committee member as a backup for Doug if for some reason he couldn't attend. I think that was Cheryl. It's been Cheryl forever. Am I correct on that?
It was, I think Christina did it last year. She was the backup.
Oh, so it wasn't.
Cheryl did it
Oh,
last
super.
year, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
There you go.
And then we have the superintendent evaluation. This is currently not a cycle, but the superintendent evaluation, just so everybody knows, responsible for ensuring the fair and timely biannual evaluation of HWRSD superintendent, makes recommendations to the full school committee on annual summative evaluation. So we don't need anybody for that this year. Okay. So thank you very much.
I'd like to ask about the planning committee. This is my fourth reorganization meeting, and we have, in all that time, not reorganized the planning committee. And I've gained a growing interest in this because after I got involved with the middle school and the core building program, it's just, and I'm not sure if the committee would choose to allow me to serve on the planning committee, but I just feel like I never had the opportunity. But maybe there's a reason or a policy reason why that's not appropriate, so I don't know.
I can speak to the way in which it's sort of been conceptually organized. The planning committee was an outgrowth of the current strategic plan, which is sunsetting this year. As we set it up, I had envisioned it as advisory to the superintendent rather than as advisory to the school committee, because it specifically includes members of the boards, the two select boards. So that's why it was sort of created under the auspices of that rather than under the auspices of the school committee policy. At the time that it was created, I believe, I forget how the original two people were chosen.
We voted at a school committee meeting. So we had a representative from each town, and so it was interest, and then the committee voted on those members.
So I think that was the thing. It originated not in the policy, it originated through the strategic plan.
So it's going to be disbanded at fall town meetings this year?
I would say it would end with the end of the strategic plan unless we choose to continue it into the next strategic plan.
I do have to go back. I do apologize. We do need some alternates for some of these subcommittees. So Finance Operations Subcommittee, we currently have Rich, Sean, and Mike. Is anyone interested in being an alternate?
Which one?
Finance Operations Technology? Okay, I'm happy to be an alternate.
Oh, Michelle, you good?
Yeah.
Oh, he's usually.
curriculum subcommittee, is anyone interested in being an alternate? Tim? Thank you. And then for, let's see, policy. Yeah. All right, thank you. Okay, so we will continue.
Can I just add to that? Because I don't, if you already know this, Bill, I apologize for, if you know you're not going to be at a meeting, then the person that knows they're not going to be at a meeting has to contact the alternate so that they know that they need to go to the meeting. So I think we, a couple of times, mixed up and the alternate didn't know they were supposed to go. So.
Yep, that's a good point. If you're not going to make it to a meeting, you should inform the chair for the school committee meeting for the subcommittee chair. And then see.
Okay, so we'll continue with new business. We have Mrs. Pickler here to talk about Iceland. And she's here to present. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
So I just wanted to come and say thank you to everybody. You are the organization, obviously, that lets us know if we can get approved to take these trips with students. And I know it's a big ask to take students abroad, international, let them out in the wild in a foreign country. So I have this presentation. I don't want to thank you by taking up a half an hour of your time. I believe that Erin shared this with everybody. So thank you to Dr. Provost for being a champion of these trips, and thank you to Dr. Hale for maybe sometimes begrudgingly saying, okay, this is a great idea. It also is a big investment, so I think when I came to you to get approval, I think it was like December of 24 or January of 25, it is quite a bit, so giving those families that length of time to have to budget for that and pay for that. This is just, I think, just going to run. I had it like every 5 seconds, but I just had some notes, and then you can go back. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We have an international committee now with myself and Mrs. McGee, Dr. Benedetti, Ms. Sierra, Mr. Hale, Dr. Hale, Nikki Smith, some other people. So pretty much every year we might be coming to you to just allow one trip a year. Multiple trips, we did that a couple times. I think it was a little bit much for everyone. But I encourage you to look through this. That one's just a generic, like that's our itinerary that's provided by EF, but also, many pictures of things that we did together. On the very first slide, there is an Instagram that one of the students ran. Eli ran that. His pictures were better than mine. He was maybe able to get some extra pictures of some elusive students that I wasn't able to get. And we also had a student, Mike, who was very big in photography and had a camera that was, I never saw anything like it, and the pictures that he took were amazing. So those are probably uploaded there. But so thank you, thank you, thank you. The itinerary and the pictures are pretty self-explanatory. The trip that we did through EF, I really enjoy them. I think they do a great job. You might be paying a little bit more, but I felt like it was very well worth it. These are pictures of when we first landed. We had 2 other groups that we were waiting for. So we went to a little Viking museum, and that's where the kids were putting on all of the, the different props or whatever. We had some breakfast. But we went all over southwestern Iceland. It was called Glaciers, and I've been told it's Geyser, not Geyser. So Geyser, we saw the original Geyser, the very first, for what all other geysers are named after. So if anybody's ever been to Iceland, you'll see, we saw all the iconic pictures, but just to see kids doing their thing. Totally appreciate the benefit of travel. I read a quote that said, if you invest in travel, you're just investing in yourself. Like all of that learning that just can't, be learned in a classroom. The independence that the kids had while staying with the group, meeting. We had a school from Quebec, a small school with us on our bus. We had a small school from Vermont, just meeting them. Getting to be friends with all of the kids that came with us. We had 8th grade through 12th because we had 8th grade, at Minnechaug last year. And all the groups, I did 2 trips to Costa Rica and then this one to Iceland. All 3 trips, the kids were amazing, but this trip in particular, they were just really took care of each other. Like it was awesome. At first the 8th grader kind of wanted to do his own thing, and I'm like, you can't go off on your own like that. So they just really embraced him. We had one student, Sam, who just graduated, who was going to the Culinary Institute of New York, and his internship, when he goes and cooks at different restaurants, is going to be in Iceland this upcoming year. Another student, Quinn, was quoted as saying that he will be living in Iceland someday. I guess he's going to be an expat and go live there. But it really sparked an interest in their travel, not just in Iceland. Before the Tartan Army came to Boston, all the kids now want to go to Scotland because our tour guide, Austin, was amazing. He was able to, never from Iceland, but he's been doing these trips, leading these trips for the past 20 years. So he was able to pronounce everything and just take us the out-of-the-way places. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce these things. Like, I took Spanish in high school, and in Costa Rica, I was pretty good at trying to converse, and maybe my pronunciations weren't great, but the Icelandic pronunciation, if any of you have been, it's out there. They learned things like finance. I think somebody's ears perked up. But our breakfast and our dinner was included. Our lunch was not. It's very expensive. It's $1 US equals 125 and 35 kroner. So the first couple of days when I overheard the kids, oh my God, I just spent $45 on lunch. And I'm like, what did you eat? And they said, oh, I got a pizza and I got, I got some nuggets and then I got a milkshake and I got all these things, 5 different things. I'm like, well, there's your first thing. But secondly, they provided a great breakfast for us, fuel up. You don't want to be spending all your money on, the lunch. I think I had a salad with some chicken on it and an iced tea, and it was $30. So it was quite expensive. And we even had one of our students, there's Christian right there on the left, in the hotel, he chose to not go out with the group one night, so I stayed back with some others, but he was doing his AP Calc pocket, so Mrs. Miracle would be proud. In terms of learning, we went to the Volcano Center, which is like a museum. We actually also drove through the road of the 2024 volcanic eruption near the Blue Lagoon. We saw the big, huge, defense wall that they put up because that's a big, tourist economic influx of dollars. People like to go to the Blue Lagoon. So we saw that, and I really thank you because when I presented the July 24 eruption, it was only within 6 months, and another science teacher texted me and said, are you sure you're going to be able to go to Iceland? The volcano just erupted. And I'm like, well, there's volcanoes all over but nothing was active when we went there. Geothermal plant we went to for their power plant. One of our students, Eli, is going to the Colorado School of Mines, so for college next year, so he was super interested in all the geology and geothermal, the waterfalls. There's one at Gulfos, there's a video of our tour guide having the kids act out the tectonic plates. So that was really cool with the other schools. We went to a folk art museum, there's pictures of turf, the turf house is there, and lots of stuff that was more exciting in person, the different tools that they used in the boats and whatever. You've seen pictures of us hiking the glacier. We put on our crampons and we got a lesson. The only lesson that some of us, well, I was free from this, but a couple of kids that kind of slipped or fell and they cut up their hands a little bit on the ice. It was very unseasonably warm. It was upper 40s, lower 50s. They didn't have gloves or mittens on, and it was gorgeous out. I think I overpacked my cold gear. They were able to see global warming firsthand. They drank water from the glacier that was melting. That was crazy. We went to or saw the Holy House, which is where Reagan and Gorbachev had their summit in 1986. They weren't as impressed as I was, being elderly. there. We also saw a piece of the Berlin Wall that was sent to them. The night that Christian decided to not go out with a group of us went to one of their national pools. That's like a huge thing. It's a local, national pastime. It was geothermically heated. Big deal for the locals. They loved it. They kept wanting to go back there. We went to an Icelandic horse farm. I guess they have like 5 different gaits. So they're not ponies. They're full-grown adult horses and kind of just very stocky and solid. They learned the Blue Lagoon, how it's formed from the runoff of the geothermal plant, and how accidentally the locals began swimming there and discovered there were many benefits to this milky colored water that had silica in it. We went to an organic greenhouse. They ate tomato ice cream and loved it. And gelato. Went to the 2 major waterfalls, saw the original geyser. There's a video of the geyser, or actual, it's called geyser, that we saw. It's like a minute long, just wait for it, because you don't want to stop filming, because then it would go off, and they got to smell the sulfur and everything. That was fun. Went to the black sand beach, collected some. One of our students, Thomas, was kind of the pack mule for that. He had a big gallon of Ziplocs. We were like, you're it. And they said that we could do that. We also have, these are the rocks from the most recent volcanic eruption, and there were signs that said, some of this is still hot, so stay over here. And they told us that Ed Sheeran famously did not listen at one point and put his foot in, and it's like the sole of his foot, the shoe melted, and he had to have some procedure. We saw a lot of locations where Game of Thrones was filmed, so not as many of the kids were into that, but we thought that was cool. The very last day, some of the other groups left early, so we had like 4 hours, and I said, well, what are we gonna do? Don't really want to go back shopping in Reykjavik, although it was amazing. Didn't need to sample the fermented shark meat that was there, or Icelandic horse. The hot dogs apparently were very good in the licorice ice cream, but they could have gone swimming again, but I said, you're not gonna be able to get ready and go to the hotel, so Austin, our tour guide, organized a trip to a museum called the Perlan. I don't have a lot of pictures from that. That was like an extra, but we got to see a little bit of Northern Lights when we were in, I'm going to pronounce it Holsbjord. That's not even what it's called. Not anywhere close. But we saw very faint, but we went into a planetarium. We went in these man-made ice caves, and then we did this like interactive volcano ride where you were like a piece of magma and then like shot out of the volcano. So it was incredible. I did bring some sand from the black sand beach, and then I have the volcanic rock, and then in case the meeting runs too long, if you want some treats. We didn't have to see any puffins because they're more north, and then there's some milk chocolate lava candy. So, but thank you so much. We had such a great time. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Excellent. Hey, just a quick question. When you said you had other groups with you, were they Americans or were they from all over?
We did have one group from Quebec, a school from Quebec, and then we had a really small group from Vermont, like kind of near Burlington. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll continue with the new clubs at Minnechaug.
This is just a request to have the baking club and book club added to the student activity account so that they can deposit and withdraw funds. Motion to approve?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. So now we're going to have the discussion about subcommittees. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything,
This is what I was talking about before.
but now we can have a discussion about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't saying like these are ideas that I have that I think that we should implement, whether it's under my chairship, Michelle's, or whomever. So, I mean, that's fine. I had said it before. Anyone have any questions or feelings on this idea of sharing the chairship among all the committees, members here?
I think it's good that you brought it up for people to think about and be aware of. I still think that each of the individual subcommittees should take the prerogative to choose whoever they want to be the chair. I don't personally think there should be a rule, although I don't think there should be a rule or a policy change, but if the committee so thinks, then the appropriate thing would be to refer it to policy subcommittee for review. Those are my thoughts.
So currently the practice is that, this has been past practice, is that the subcommittees elect their chair people. Another option is, which is in the policy, is that the school committee, if the school committee agrees, the chair of the school committee can appoint the subcommittee chairs. The other thing is when the subcommittee chooses their own chairs, it gives ownership to the people doing the work. And I guess my one concern about making everybody be a subcommittee chair is somebody may not be interested, they may not have the time to put in the work, or for whatever reason. So I think the committee really needs to decide if there is the other option of allowing the chair to the full committee would have to agree, allowing the chair to choose the chair of the subcommittee, or continue what we're doing for past practice.
I think I had something down on the exceptions that if someone didn't want to or didn't have the time to, then that's fine, and then someone else would just have to double up.
One question I actually have for you on that is I think that there are exceptions to certain subcommittees. So it was the MASC and MASS, MARS, and LPVEC. And I just wondered, and the planning committee.
Because I say it doesn't apply to them because on the thing before, they just don't have, it's just we're a representative to another committee. It's not like, say for example, finance, and operations, which is 3 people from this committee. It's just a representative to Lower Pioneer Valley, both Mars, because I thought we had to have one school committee member, but that's fine. And then the MSC representation, it's like, I'm not chairing anything, I'm just a voice for the committee, or whoever chooses to do it. That's why I put them aside.
So, I guess another conversation, or kind of to couple with that is, so if we're trying to share the responsibilities among all of the school committee members to be chairs of subcommittees, would we also say and put limitations on as to how long somebody could be a representation for a certain subcommittee? So, for example, like Lisa's been the LPVEC. Sorry, not to pick on you, but you've been the representative for LPVEC for so many years. So and then you say, oh, I did that before, so I'd like to do it again. Not allowing other people to have the opportunity to be represented. Is that something that you were thinking of? When you're talking about sharing responsibility among communities?
I think I agree with Dr. Carabasi that there's no substitute for experience. So I've been on some committees for 10 years, and there's a value to that. There's historical value, things that we've done that work, things that we've done that didn't work, things that we didn't do that we should do, and et cetera. So, I think was anyone here didn't get on a committee because we didn't seem like anyone was contested to be on an actual committee. There was no 4 people that said I want to be on there, and we had to pick 3. So no, that wasn't mine. I was just saying. I was just saying that that it seemed that we had just, like I said, 2 major, and then Lisa with one that were chairing all of the committees. And I just thought it would, give everyone a chance to, lead the committee. And when you have 3, if you're a chair of 3 subcommittees, that's a lot of work, right? And if you're a chair of 1 subcommittee, then you're putting all your energy into that, chairing that 1 committee. I just thought that would be better for the committee, and that's why I came up with that.
Rich?
I was going to say that I believe in addressing problems if we have a problem, And so is there anybody that really wanted to be the chairman of the subcommittee that wasn't allowed to be one because somebody else was the chairman of 3 subcommittees or something like that? So if that's not the case, then we really don't need to address something. I think that people that want to do something, it's, you know, if you had one person that was 3 and somebody else really wanted to do it, and, you know, they'd probably say, okay, you can take this one. I mean, it seems to have been going fine in the past. I don't know if it's been a complaint by somebody that really wanted to be a chairman. So unless we have a problem, I don't see addressing. It seems to have gone smooth. People seem to be, you know, this year I decided to be on the finance committee. You said fine, and it seems to be going without votes, and, you know, people that want to do something can do it. Some years you have time, some years you don't have time. So people that want to do it should be the ones that get nominated by their fellow subcommittee members. And if we have a problem in the future, we can address it.
I think that's why I brought this up, because I've been on some committees and I wanted to be the chair of some of those committees, but other people were, and the committee voted, and that's fine. But we had, Michelle, I think you had 3, right? Mike had 3, and Lisa
I
had
was
1.
the superintendent evaluation, because the chair typically is the chair of that committee. I'm chair of negotiation because the school committee chair is typically in past practice has been the school committee
Not
chair.
always, I've been the chair of that for a couple of years. So
Okay.
past years it
Well, the
wasn't that
subcommittee
practice.
said, since you're the chair, you should be the chair of the negotiations. And then I was the chair of planning committee, which was determined, I think even when we go around each year, after even we reorganize, you've asked for there to be a reconsideration of chair, and the subcommittee has still chosen.
Yeah.
I believe I was chair of both the policy and the finance subcommittees last year. I certainly have a big interest in continuing. I'll be open and transparent. I will be seeking the chair again for the finance committee if the subcommittee so deems that's appropriate. But in light of everyone's comments, I am more than happy to allow somebody else to take the chair responsibility for the policy subcommittee. You know, I feel connected to finance because I've spent time working on the town finance side of things, and so I think that gives me a unique perspective and understanding of what's going on with the various monopoly money shuffles that go on. It's crazy.
I agree, but
So
also,
I'll comment on
yeah,
that.
I also
I'm
am
not
going to
sure.
try to be the chair of that committee as well. And like you had said, there's no substitute for experience in 10 years being on that committee and the different things that we've had and conversations. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll wait till we cross that bridge. But if it's not something that anyone else is interested in, then that's fine. I just presented these as things that I thought could help make things better. But if that's not the will of the committee, then that's absolutely fine.
Does anyone else have any other comments?
Yeah, back in my other life, I was the chair of several committees, and quite frankly, it's a very tough position for me because you feel like you can't be leading the conversation. You got to give everybody else a chance to talk and hold back. And I'm no shrinking violet from my so I'm just saying. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you were the chair of the committee. So that's just my feeling.
That's a very good insight. About the fact that the chair can't say, not that you talk about that.
Okay, anyone else? Okay.
One other comment or thought that made me think, and we can't do this today because we're not posted for it, but I wonder if, along the transparency lines, if when we do the reorganization meeting, if the subcommittees in front of the chair of the school committee, but organize themselves as well at the organization meeting. Because then there's all that. Because, right, like, you know, we've had people assign subcommittees, but, you know, we're in a little bit of limbo. Like, obviously, I'll reach out to Erin to schedule the first finance subcommittee meeting because I was the chair last year, but technically I'm not the chair of that, not until the committee meets, right? And, you know, so maybe, you know, maybe next year we might want to consider at the organization meeting also, you know, having, you know, letting each of the subcommittees vote to do their thing, to pick their committee chair so that when we leave the organization meeting, the whole organizational structure is known and Erin knows who to call for what, that kind of stuff.
So, actually, I believe that we're actually able to do that if the committee is interested in doing that this evening, because on the agenda, we are posted for subcommittee assignments and a vote. So that would be a part of a subcommittee assignment. So I don't know if there's any discussion or any thoughts on whether or not you'd like to do that now.
If you're in multiple subcommittees, it seems like that's going to be syndicate for organization.
Well, no, we would give each subcommittee a turn. It's not like they're picking 5 leadership positions for subcommittees. Each subcommittee, asks who wants to do this. So if people want to do it tonight, I'm open to doing it tonight. I'm open to waiting for the first subcommittee meetings, if that's what people's preference are. But it's something I bring up in, the interest of transparency, then it would be in front of the whole committee and people, everyone seeing that the subcommittee chose who was. I would be against the chair appointing the chairs of the subcommittee, but I would oppose that. I like the concept of the subcommittees choosing their leadership and having ownership and buy-in to the work and stuff, so. Okay, quiet.
Is there any interest in doing that this evening?
I would tend to wait, but it's my personal opinion.
I agree with Rich.
Anyone? Okay, so in an effort to save time, so why don't we continue moving forward? Okay, so now we will continue with referring the vehicle replacement policies for Green Communities Act to Policy Subcommittee. Jeff?
So I failed to actually put the copy of the policy into your packet. It's fairly non-controversial. So we're working with both communities who are partnering with the state to be part of the Green Communities Act, and therefore if they participate in that, they're eligible for grants. The goal being over it's a 5-year period to have a 20% reduction in energy use. So having schools, and particularly the regional school district, to partner with that is I think, positive. And we have a couple of route projects coming up where we're going to be compelled to evaluate solar. So that's an opportunity to perhaps leverage green communities to help us out there. But nonetheless, one of the sort of pieces of the puzzle for the regional school committee to be a partner with the towns in their Green Communities Act work is to adopt a vehicle replacement policy. And essentially what it does is when you are replacing a vehicle, it has to be of a certain gas efficiency. Thresholds aren't terribly high. They have different kinds. We don't have a ton of vehicles, first and foremost, so we only have about, I think about 10, off the top of my head, that's what I'm recalling, total vehicles in our fleet. We have some things that aren't, when you have a tractor or something like that, it's not included. But it's the kind of thing we would do regardless, just because it's cost effective to buy a gas efficient vehicle, but it does push you into making specific choices about the fuel economy of the vehicles that you purchase. So that's what that policy entails.
I believe this came as a request from some town officials, is that correct?
Yeah, the towns had asked us if we wanted to partner with their green communities efforts, and so we were saying yes, we'd be willing to do that. We provided access to a number of our electrical and gas accounts, so they can get that information, because do a look back over years of usage and look for ways and opportunities for reduction in energy use. Vehicles being one component of that, so it was encouraged for us to participate in that by select board members, so we decided to join in.
You said that you would be compelled to participate in solar. Don't we already have solar panels on this building?
We have solar panels on this building. So what is a part of the MSBA process for roof projects, of which we have 2, both being Wilbraham buildings, but they evaluate the capacity of the roof, both from a solar capacity standpoint, but also from a structural capacity to take solar. So that is, when you do the design work for that roof, you're compelled to do that as part of the design work, is to evaluate whether you move forward with any solar at that point is up to the district to consider at that point. So you're compelled to determine how much capacity you've got and capability you've got on your roof that you're getting, reimbursed for by MSBA. You're not compelled to actually put that on there.
Would MSBA be paying for part of that if we decided to go with solar?
I don't believe they reimburse for like the panels, that sort of thing, no. But that's where being a partner with the Green Communities, we could position grants to help with that,
Oh, okay.
right? So we could, sort of piggyback the two different programs to help us out a little bit with regard to that.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
So they're adding to the cost of the feasibility studies by compelling the additional planning and work to be done. But then they're not going to offer money to help them. So.
Well, they do reimburse that work as part of their reimbursement for that, but yes, that is true.
Every little bit helps, given that Canada's burning, Europe's burning, so every little bit helps. Everybody contributes, does the same thing, might make a difference.
May I have a motion?
I'd like to make a
Okay,
motion
this
to
has- I'm
refer
sorry,
it to the
do we have
policy
to vote on
subcommittee.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
The vote is to just refer to the subcommittee. Thank you.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. So we're going to move into old business. So the regional agreement, revised draft discussion, and possible vote. John?
Thank you. So, I think maybe to orient you to the document, if you would turn to page 6 in your draft restated regional agreement. There's a paragraph D which is highlighted in fuchsia. This is where the only changes from the last version of the agreement occur. It's that whole paragraph and then a few changes in paragraph E. Everything else is the same. As you know, we had made changes all throughout this document over the course of many iterations and many months, and had been essentially stuck for more or less 18 months around this issue of paragraph D, which has to do with the status of the middle school. Things started to shift when the decision was made to move the middle school into the core program. There was, in my opinion, a very productive joint board meeting in early May where there was sort of a framework of an idea of how we might want to approach paragraph D. There was another meeting held last week where I think even more detail was put together towards how we might want to approach paragraph D. Since that meeting, I've been working with Doug and with Attorney Sweeney to try to just sort of capture what was said within that meeting in language that could be shared with the two towns and with their legal counsel for feedback for incorporation into a possible agreement. Because the towns have a goal, which I'm very excited about, of getting this into fall town meetings, which means that we're coming up against the deadline because they'll be putting together their warrants in short order. So I guess one of the things I'm just highlighting is we've put this together. We haven't got feedback yet. There's a possibility we may have to do another, I may be requesting another meeting based on feedback we received to make tweaks if tweaks are necessary. But I think this is at least faithful to the conversations that took place. And so just to read into the record, it's somewhat of a technical thing, but so that everyone understands what we're talking about. The new proposed language for paragraph D says, the district has submitted a statement of interest, SOI, for the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, core program for Wilbraham Middle School. The approval process and project completion require firm financial commitments from the member towns in view of the fact that the MSBA funding is in the nature of a grant program provided a percentage reimbursement of costs paid by the district. The member towns agree that in the event that HWRSD and the MSBA become signatories to a project funding agreement for the core program for Wilbraham Middle School, which requires as a condition precedent that member towns have appropriated the entire projected cost in the aggregate through appropriate town meeting votes, Wilbraham Middle School will be converted to a district-owned property, and capital costs will be apportioned according to paragraph E of this section. The towns agree to cooperate in taking all steps necessary to effectuate the intent of this language, which is to transfer ownership control of Wilbraham Middle School to HWRSD. The parties acknowledge that how best to effectuate the intent of this language will depend on how the project scope is approved by MSBA, which could include renovations to the existing building, construction of a new building on the current site, or construction of a new building on an alternative site. Accordingly, the parties will, as appropriate, in view of the project scope, transfer title to the renovated Wilbraham Middle School and real estate upon which it is located to the HWRSD, establish title in HWRSD to the new building on the same site, and transfer title to real estate upon which is located to the HWRSD, or establish title in HWRSD to a new building on an alternative site as a necessary transfer title to the real estate upon which is located to the HWRSD. As relates to the transfer of real estate, the parties may effectuate the intent of this language through the conveyance of a smaller parcel than the entire approximate 63-acre parcel on which Wilbraham Middle School is located. The conversion to a district-owned property will also involve parties' agreement to nullify any existing lease of the current Wilbraham Middle School to the district. So that basically says, if you get to the point where there is an agreement from the MSBA to fund the project, and there is an agreement from the towns to fund the project, that's really the trigger point for making the middle school a district building. And I say middle school with the knowledge that it may not be that same building. It might be a new building to be constructed, it could be that same building, but whatever school serves middle school students would become a regional building at that time. And then the change to paragraph E, this is a paragraph that talks about the way costs are appropriated for Minnechaug. So it speaks to grades 9 through 12. So the change that we would make to make this inclusive of a middle school, which is also regional, which is just to change 9 to 12 to grades served by that property. So those are the two changes. That has been circulated to attorneys for both towns. We're just, waiting for feedback. I will say, we were working on this very, up until, I would say, probably 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, so it's not surprising that we haven't gotten feedback yet. But if this language is acceptable to the school committee, I think acknowledging that through a vote would at least let Sean know and let the towns know that this would be okay as far as the school committee is concerned.
Does anyone have any comments or discussion?
Yeah, I've had some people who are on the finance committee in Wilbraham and Capital who said that they haven't been a part of these conversations, and I think before we vote on something, I think it would probably be good for us to reach out to them, send them copies of this, ask if they have any issues with that when they have a meeting, rather than before the attorneys and everyone say, okay, yeah, we like this, we vote on it, what if there's a change, then there'd have to be another vote from the committee, do we have to vote to rescind, and then whatever. I would just say, not that I think we should hold this back any longer than it's already been held back, but I don't think that, especially Capital, really needs to be on board with this, or else, this doesn't mean anything if they're not going to abide by it.
The only question I would ask in response to that is, do you know if those boards are currently constituted in meeting? Because the deadline we have from Wilbraham would be the middle of August.
I think they're still working on repopulating Wilbraham FinCom, although that last meeting on Monday they appointed someone else. I respect what you're saying, Sean, but the appointees of the various finance authorities and capital planning take their direction from the select board. They're kind of appointees to March. They don't, they're not elected. They don't have individual power and authority, but they do meet and they discuss and go over the numbers. I think it's very important for this to get to the fall town meetings. To do what you're suggesting, this will not go to fall town meetings. There's no way that we would have stuff done before the middle of September, and it wouldn't be in time for fall town meeting. So I think that's important for the committee to say. I think this is very well written, and it covers a number of eventualities, right? Because we don't know how it's going to plan out, and I think I think it's very well written to cover a number of eventualities, and I'm hoping that the towns will be comfortable. By the towns, I mean the people at the town's meeting, right? The select boards met, and I think they had some degree of comfort with this. But really, it comes down to the towns, right? And the members of Wilbraham FinCom and the Hamden Advisory will be at the town meetings as well to express their opinion as well. So, I don't know, I think, I'm happy to make a motion to approve or accept.
I think it would be more honesty for that.
I would agree with time constraint. I agree with Mike. If we had months and months to go, that's one thing, but if we vote on it, and if it's a big blowback, we could always rescind and vote something else. So, so to make some motion now, given the time constraint, I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Sean, were you in your conversations with the members of the other committees, or are there specific concerns, or just that they aren't in the loop, so to speak?
They were like, this is news to us. We watched that meeting, and this is news to us. We did not agree with this. We don't have any say in this. And we don't want to start this disagreement with that kind of, why didn't Wilbraham Finance approve the truck, right? They said it was never brought to them, and it wasn't there. They never talked about it, with them. Okay, I understand from that point of view, but we need to dot our I's, cross our T's a little better. But I think that for number one, for us to move forward without going to them and seeing if maybe they have a better way of doing it that we haven't talked to them about, and then also giving the people of Hamden and Wilbraham time to read over, understand the changes, so that they know what they're voting on in the fall. I get it. We should have. This could have been done years ago, but we've been following the process and going through it. It hasn't been easy, but to really rush it right at the end, I think like Rich Redder said, it could blow up in our face, and then where are we? We're several more steps back than we were. Than if we've done years of talking, negotiating with people. Maybe just another few months may be better.
I just didn't say it would blow up in our face. I said that if it does, then we could always come back to it. But I'm for making progress now and going ahead, not just delay.
So we have some representation from Hamden, from the select board. I know you're not here to represent the select board, but just some feedback. So we were talking about, advisory and your capital. I know you don't have a capital committee, but have you discussed it with advisory? Are there any things that you know of that may be problematic from their perspective?
I think when we left John Klein.
Can we invite you up to the table and we'll bring you a microphone? Thank you.
John Klein, I'm here. Don Davenport is also here, but we're not here as members of the select board. We randomly showed up here because we don't have a life. I had coffee from Rice's, and Don brought his own snacks. We met, as John talked about, it was, I think, a very productive meeting. The last two meetings have been productive with Wilbraham Select Board. Speaking for myself, I think there was a path forward. I would say we haven't had a chance to bring in the other boards. As Sean said, there are a lot of stakeholders in this process. And we do want to get this done. We've talked about that, but perhaps with a short time frame where we have to set the agenda for a fall town meeting. This is a major step to bring into the stakeholders in a quick process over the summer might be challenging at this point. However, the step we've taken so far is to encourage the school committee or the district committee to bring all lawyers into the mix to and get their input on the verbiage at this point. Will be ongoing discussion during our board meetings. So at this point, I guess the question is, we have not forwarded it to advisory at this point. And as you said, I think FinCom is in a bit of flux at this point too, as you're looking for your members over there.
Thank you. Any other feedback?
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward. I don't want to lose any time, because I think getting that middle school taken care of, I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that. I do have one concern, however, and I'm not going to try to change it, but on page 3, where it says exceptions, on number 2, I just want to make sure and go on record that the assignment or reassignment being prudent means we're not going to overcrowd a school. And, I don't want to read it. I wasn't here when Thornton Burgess disintegrated, but it put tremendous pressure on middle school. I don't foresee anything that could be like that, but you never know. One of our elementaries may have a catastrophic failure, and we may have to redistribute students. And it shouldn't be just the student. It's the whole student population that has to be considered. So I want to go on record that prudent means not only the effect on the individual student who's being reassigned or transferred, but the impact on the rest of the students in that school. I don't want to see us overload a school because for whatever reason, parents get it in their mind, no, that's the school my kids got to go to. Then they come to us. I think we've got to make a stand. And so I'm going on record that prudent means we got to consider the total student population when we're doing these transfers.
I also agree that we should continue moving forward in this, and the full school committee can vote, and we will, we can await feedback from the attorneys, and John will keep us abreast of any new developments, and if we have to reconvene and have further discussion, we will do that, but I think it's a good step to be able to move forward and present to say the school committee has voted and agreed and approved this draft, and then we can bring it to the other stakeholders and the community to be able to say this is the draft. So I think it's important to continue moving forward. Okay, so.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, we'll do it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so motion carries 6-1. Thank you. So we will continue with the I'm going to entertain a public comment. Yes.
Just taking a vote,
It's okay. But we might be coming back to the table, so.
Yeah, sure, right here. Why don't you sit right here?
Oh, I brought the wrong paper.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Sternberg, 15 Mountain View Drive, Hamden. I'm using information as reported in the July 29th edition of the Reminder. When the two select boards met on July 23rd, 2026, they created a middle school interim plan, possibly to be voted on tonight. The plan asks for $86,000 to mitigate the problematic air quality in the Wilbraham Middle School building as relates to mold and excessive humidity. The ask is for Hamden to pay 20% of this cost, $17,000. Wilbraham has owned this building since 1968. Wilbraham is solely responsible for the maintenance, repairs, and replacements of the Wilbraham Middle School building. To ask Hamden to pay any percentage or amount of these capital costs can be compared to a building owner and a tenant. If no lease is involved, the building owner can force a tenant from a clean and functional apartment, but offering a second one in need of pre-existing, overdue, and significant repairs. A draft of the amendment to the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional Agreement may be voted on tonight. The draft contains a section whereby Hamden would pay 20% of the outstanding present and future updates and repairs, with the exception of improvements that are the sole responsibility of the school district. As a reminder, Hamden currently contributes 20% to the district budget. This is a very big deal. It sets a precedent for the requests of funds for the future as yet to be identified improvements. Hamden manages its budget well and has the reputation for being frugal. Over 50% of the town of Hamden budget is sent to the school district by way of the annual assessment. Hamden taxpayers discuss and then vote on each article at town meetings. Where is the evidence that the town of Wilbraham, as the sole owner, is committed to the Wilbraham Middle School building and grounds? Is it premature to be formalizing cost splits at this time? I appreciate your attention to these comments and concerns, and I'm submitting this transcript for inclusion into the public record.
Thank you. So I'm sure there will be further developments on the regional agreement. So we will continue with the reconsideration of FY27 budget discussion and possible vote.
Was this public comment, or was this just, you brought that in because she was commenting on what we're going to vote on?
Yes, I said I would entertain the public comment.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I can ask the chair to actually skip into the agenda down to 6B, so I can walk through the interim improvement and repair plan first, and then, because that informs the discussion about the budget adjustment, if that's all right. So in your packet, there's a cover memo that I prepared for the joint meeting of the select boards that occurred, see if I can remember the date, July 26th, was it? 23rd. Thank you. Yes, the 23rd. And so what preceded that was a series of meetings that we had at the suggestion of both towns to come up with a plan of interim repairs and improvements that we could agree to, and that we could use to keep the middle school building in good functioning order while the core program is proceeding. Applications for the core programs take a fairly long time. When I give the MSP update, I'll tell you where we are in that, but nonetheless, it takes a while. The typical time horizon for those is on the order of like 6 or 7 years. And so we're going to need to do some work and maintain that current building and all our middle school students are in the meantime. So myself, our facilities staff, facilities folks from the town of Wilbraham and from the town of Hampton all got together and went through a variety of items that we were looking at, and we identified there's, through recent town meetings in Wilbraham, there's some things that are needed at the building that have been funded. So there was pre-existing remediation and removal of asbestos from the building, which has been funded in previous year's capital appropriation, which is available. Some of that work is actually going on right now this summer. There was appropriation this past spring for some door replacement. And so the things that the group decided were the most critical aspects of work in the coming in the coming few years are building security, so, you know, the doors, obviously, you know, remediation and repair of asbestos as needed, and of course, the third thing is indoor air quality. I feel like the kinds of mitigation steps we've taken over the last few years, since, in particular, since the mold issue in the August of '24, have been working, but they have a temporary sort of sort of look and feel to them. You know, we have a lot of dehumidifiers that we manually empty. We have some air conditioning that provides some relief. There's some additional air conditioning needs for students coming to the building. And so, you know, we talked about a variety of things besides those that are already funded, about things we might be funding in the future. We kind of pared down from that. There were some options that were put forward that we decided weren't worth the time and effort. We just didn't feel like we'd have a tremendous amount of return for the investment in that. We also looked at, you know, are there opportunities for us to, say if we put in the air conditioning in a certain space within the building, can we reuse that in another place in the district in a couple of years? Because the typical lifespan of like a mini split is in the 10 to 15 year range, more so in the 15-year range these days. You know, if we're 6 or 7 years and we have a new building, then we can take those units before that building is modified or replaced and utilize them elsewhere.
If I could just speak to the point you just made, because I think it also speaks to some public comments we heard and discussion at the meeting. We also said that some of those types of equipment could be used in an existing building and could be a way of recapturing some of the value to the towns that are providing the funding for it.
That's right. So as we discuss those items and we, you know, articulated those, there's a cost sheet or an item cost sheet in your packet. You know, there had been a small amount of contingency when we brought it to us for our last meeting. We had a conversation about that contingency, whether it was sufficient. There's a lot of variability in pricing these days, as everyone knows. But nonetheless, you know, we kind of collectively thought that we would need a little more contingency, and so what we brought to the select boards that basically about a week later was a slightly larger amount of contingency. And so the total amount that we felt would be able to take these modest things, some of which are materials that we own, we're going to, you know, plumb them differently for, you know, ease of use and effectiveness, that type of thing, was a little over $85,000. And so that's the idea being that most of them are modest in scope, and so we could accomplish them very quickly. And one of the ways we can do that would be to modify the budget and put it into our operating budget for fiscal year '27 and execute on those things over the course of this fiscal year to get them in place. And so that's an articulation of that plan, the ideas behind it, how we worked through, you know, what the numbers were and how we got to where they are. And so that's, you know, part of the conversations around regional agreement and future of that building and making sure to maintain a good safe space and healthy space for the students and staff that are in that building in the next few years while we're applying a core program and hopefully becoming a participant in that program is what the focus of that group was and the results that we got. So I'm happy to answer any questions people have about our process or how we got to where we got to.
I mean, at the meeting, I think the general consensus from both select boards was they were surprised at how manageable / reasonable the number is compared to what they thought was coming down. And Doug and John did say, I'm not sure which one or if you both said it, that we're doing a lot of this work in-house in order to keep the pricing down, which I think is just a great use of funds and resources. So thank you, gentlemen.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, I keep talking because your microphone's on.
I mean, I think this is great, and you know, I applaud both select boards for making forward progress on this, and I think it's very frankly, very generous on part of Hamden to be considering stepping up to help. understanding they don't own the building, but their children are there, right? I mean, I'm just overwhelmed with how great this is, and, you know, I couldn't be thankful enough, and certainly support.
There's one other item that I think we could use some direction from the committee on. There's a great deal of urgency expressed by both boards at that meeting for us getting as much of the work on this interim plan done as quickly as possible, to the extent that it was suggested that we start immediately. I think there was feelings that these projects would be able to garner support of the voters at fall town meetings. But I said that I was not comfortable going into a deficit spending mode without consulting with the school committee. So I wanted, I guess, get your direction on whether you want us to start right now or wait till the funds come in.
So the issues that are going to be addressed in the short-term plan, so we're talking about this $83,000 amount, correct? Will they potentially benefit the health of the children in the building the sooner they're addressed?
Yes.
And the faculty?
Yes.
And if I'm correct, since we don't need to go into deficit spending, if I'm correct, the numbers came in with Chapter 70 where above where we predicted them, so we do have excess and deficiency funds from last year in excess of this amount that could be used to backstop this amount of money, right?
Well, I guess what I'd say about that is the $10 differential doesn't cover all of this, because we budgeted on 150, it came in at 160, and technically, I believe.
No, but we kept the money in E&D to bridge the gap from 75 to 150.
Pardon?
Right? We kept enough money. We kept $230,000 in E&D to cover. Because when we discussed, should we do the budget off of 150 per student, right? And instead of the 75 we promised at the time, and I suggested, and the subcommittee agreed that yes, but we have to keep that money in E&D to backstop it, so we don't end up with our pants down. So there should be at least $230,000 left in E&D from the budget.
That's correct. There's
I'm not talking about what's to be certified for the next year. I'm talking about money that was certified that has not been committed.
Correct.
Okay. So we wouldn't necessarily have to deficit spend, but if we agreed to use those E&D funds for this, and the towns didn't come in with the money, well, I mean, I don't know. Can we use the E&D funds now and then still ask the towns for the money? Or do we have to deficit spend it in some way and then ask the towns for the money, knowing that we won't end up in debt if they refuse it, then we will backstop it from E&D?
So there's a couple of mechanisms you can employ here. If you wanted to formally leverage the E&D funding, you would make an adjustment to the budget where you would adjust the sources, but it wouldn't have an impact on the assessments to the towns because you'd be funding it from an existing source. On the other hand, if you adjust the budget to include the 85,719 and then you simultaneously adjust the assessments accordingly and then make that request to the towns, they then can take that and take action at town meeting for that. If they reject it, then you can go back and leverage E&D to supplant that non-funding of that, if you chose to as a committee. And so, so it's sort of which direction you want to get. If you formally appropriate the E&D now, you're not going to be asking them to take action on a change in their assessment. So you should probably want to ask if you you think the assessment's the better way to get it, ask for the assessment first. If that fails, then you have an option of exploring the question of E&D.
And of course, the negative news in the E&D is that that money will be, that money will be getting contributed towards the next budget cycle.
Right.
So if we spent that money on this, then that would be $84,000 less dollars to go towards
Right.
offsetting the town's assessments for the following budget year.
That's correct.
So, all right, so so if the committee decides it's better that, yes, we increase the assessments, which is the plan, what is the mechanism by which you could do that? Start the work before the town meetings? You can't, right?
Well, there's a number of things that are already funded, which we're working on as we speak. So like the asbestos project's underway, the door replacement's underway. So there's that can be done. I think it would be, if the committee is willing to commit to that 85,000 regardless of funding mechanism, then we would be more confident in starting the work without having the true source of it identified at the moment. But the option is sort of up to the committee as far as whether that's the case. We have several things we're working on at the moment that are currently funded in the mix and available to us. It's really just a question of how strong the committee wants to offer more than one option to fund it. If you're committed to one or the other regardless, then that gives the superintendent and myself the ability to go to the staff and say, we can start right now. And then we figure out whether it's a change to the assessment to the towns or whether it's a leveraging of E&D.
If these units aren't operational for the beginning of the school year, are there implications with students and the Americans with Disabilities Act?
So there's many of them that are in place now, but what the circumstance is that they are not, like I said, with like the dehumidification, it's, they're manually drained. So we have staff that go around and drain them, collect all the water and dump the water out. It takes a lot of man hours to do that. We have to have and pay, overtime for people to come on Saturday and Sunday to do that. But the actual dehumidification, which is doing the real thing, is happening right now. And we have those. So it's about improving that to make it a little more robust in a lot of ways because it would automatically drain all the time. The air conditioning, there's some that's in place. We'd be putting more of that in place. I don't know if there's any immediate need for a known student for first day of school that we need to address, but but it may also require some creative scheduling for the building to navigate the spaces that do have air conditioning until we can get it installed. So sooner is always better. Often, if we're putting in like a mini split type system, we often have to try to find a time when students are in the building, because you're doing things like drilling holes through the wall to run the piping in and out, electrical work, to bring electrical supply to the units, that type of thing. So that often requires us to sort of find, sometimes the students aren't around to do that work where we're going to be disrupted to education. So that's probably one of the bigger constraints as far as execution.
Have we run this list and the proposed idea of the 80-20 split, or whatever the split happens to be, correct?
It's roughly 80-20?
Yeah, okay. No, has that been even presented to Wilbraham Finance? No. Has it been presented to Wilbraham Capital? Okay. Has it been presented to Hand Advisor? No, okay. And then the only public comment that we had so far today was against this, right? So 100% of all public comment has been against this. So I don't want to give Lisa a heart attack by saying that I in part agree with what some of what she was saying. I just think that we should have all the parties involved before we put this forth, unless we decide, as Dr. Terabasi just said, that use that money that we saved in case we didn't get the 160 and put that money in, you know, out of E&D. But then still, I would recommend before we do that, just to, if we make that decision, at least let them know what's out there, talk to the different parties involved, and then say, hey, listen, you know, we're going to use the E&D or whatever we decide as a committee today. That's what I would recommend.
Once again, the problem is none of those committees are meeting over the summer, Sean, and they're not all reconstituted at this point. And we have to approve something at this meeting for it to be able to show up on the fall town meeting, at least for Wilbraham. I fully agree that, and I would expect that capital and advisory for both towns will weigh in on these. The truck. We also have to increase the assessments for the truck. You're correct. This is separate from that, but yes, the truck's been approved. Well,
Wilbraham already approved the truck.
Yeah.
Right, you revise the assessment and take it back down. Are you voting to then revise the assessment up? We would reconsider it when we had recap, which would require a new assessment from you. Is that part of your discussion?
That is on our agenda. We're not discussing that right. What we're just.
No, I'm saying is that tonight too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. So, a lot of interesting points and stuff. Where I guess my deference would be to increase the assessment to cover this, especially because the select boards both supported it, and knowing that it may be moved no action at a town meeting, or it might be taken off the agenda at a town meeting if the town authorities, when they get a chance to look at it, decide they're not going to go after it. And it could very well be, right, that Camden is in the position to act on these things, and then Wilbraham will say they're not in the position to act on it, right? And then we'll have to wait for the spring meeting for Wilbraham to take action, because that's when they normally do their capital process, right? So, you know, we want to do our best to work with the towns and their capital schedules. So, I'm in favor of this.
I just want to clarify one thing. This in particular, we're suggesting be a change to the operating budget for the coming year and not a capital project. It's 85,000. So it's an adjustment to the operating budget, which puts us on the clock to finish the work by June 30th. But again, I think that's entirely doable, but it's also...
and all the individual components are small enough in cost separately in the organization that they don't qualify to be part of the capital process, correct? Because they're like 2,000, 3,000, and something's got to be over.
Yeah, I mean, procurement rules apply, so if we go and buy, you know, if we're buying, say, a series of mini splits, and collectively that's more than $10,000, then there's procurement rules we have to follow. So yes, there are some things listed here that are very low cost, they wouldn't sort of trigger that. So procurement rules will still apply and be necessary, even if it's not considered a capital project per se.
I'd like to hear from everybody else.
Yes, I'm going to answer some questions from the gallery. You just stick them up to the microphone.
Yeah, I'll come down to it. Yeah, we have a couple of different points. I'm just asking about the process here. We left the May town meeting with an understanding you revised the assessment, so we took the two capital items off, and we said we would address them in the fall when we had free cash. Wilbraham went ahead and approved that if Henry goes ahead, you're all set for the dump truck and is it switches at the high school? Always switches. Should have bought switch stuff. So we were anticipating that at some point you're going to revise the assessment, send us a letter. I'm not sure of the timing on revised ones. I don't think the 35-day thing applies. That's only on the initial one. If you're talking about also increasing to potentially talk about the capital items at WMS, that's a lump sum. We're not allowed to say, okay, we agreed to the truck, the switches, but not that. We get a lump sum from you. It's up or down. Same thing we talked about in the spring. So the only question I have, and you hear that there's some doubt about funding that, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. If you're really passionate about the truck and the switches, and you're sensing that perhaps one or both towns, as Sean said, stakeholders have not weighed in yet on this, you might put everything in jeopardy because you have to give that omnibus changed assessment number. That's my point. And there's this other guy here who I've never met him before, but he wants to talk also.
Don Davenport, and I just want to talk about the middle school repairs. I think it's important to note it's really a package here. You have $50,000 for the asbestos already, you have $40,000 for the doors, you have $105,000 in the general maintenance account that's already been approved, and if we do $86,000 here, you're talking about $281,000 of substantial repairs that will go a long way to cleaning up some of the problems you have there. And I think it's, you have to, when we present it to town meeting, at least if I'm the one who presents it, I want to present it as a package. And this is the last part of the package, because those neat repairs are long overdue and need to be done. We've put together a pretty good program to do it, and it was reasonable for both towns. So I think you look at the package, it's a $281,000 reduction.
Thank you.
We're talking about the health and safety of the kids and the adults in the middle school. If we were to say, go ahead, we'll find a way to deal with it, would we have sufficient work done that would start school with better air quality, with a lack of asbestos?
I'd say that air quality's been decent, and so that would probably be maintained. You know, the types of things we employed over the last year or two in those spaces has improved it and gotten to a stable place that's better than it was. The asbestos work is, I think they might have finished it this week, and then there's some tile work. Now, if you take up the tile that has asbestos in it, lay new tile, but that's to be coming in the next little bit. So that will be in place. I think the air quality is about maintaining. It'll be in good shape. It'll just, you know, these types of systems improvements will make it easier to maintain that and require less of hands-on work. But I think we'll be in a good, steady place. Is it the optimal for that building, or what we might do if we were, you know, if we knew we were going to stay in the building for 20 years, would we take a different approach? Yeah, we probably would. But for the time horizon we're talking about of about 6 to 10 years, you know, this is a modest way to maintain a decent environment for the kids and for the staff. And obviously, you know, it is also an old building, so things can happen, and we'll obviously have to react if those things do happen. But obviously, we're trying to make most efforts and maintain those systems that exist in now as best we can to keep it functioning well.
So I guess my question is, if we gave you the approval, knowing that there is a way in the current budget to shift things around, two different ways that I've heard here, we could cover it, we wouldn't be in a deficit. And this work could be completed at a time when the kids are not in school, and that's my major thing. I mean, we've been sitting on this problem for over a decade in that middle school, and I would like to see it corrected. I know it's an interim step, it's not a final solution, but I think we have an obligation to make that building as safe and healthy as possible before the kids get back in there this year. So I would be in favor of saying, hey, let's just go ahead.
Can you answer the deficit part? The deficit part?
So if you know, if you as a committee, commit to utilizing E&D as a source, depends on how you want to approach this. If you want to pursue the option of a modification to the assessment to the towns to fund this as the sort of first option, that makes no guarantee that you would, if it fails, there's a way to fund this. But if you then simultaneously said, well, if that fails at town meeting, we're going to commit to using E&D funds for that purpose, that gives us a specific direction that you're going to take that alternate step of funding it from E&D if it fails at town meeting. So you have, a choice that you can make here. The other choice would be just say, we're going to do E&D, and we're not going to ask the towns for any more relative to this. We're just taking out E&D. They both contributed to E&D over the years. There's plus and minus to that, because it, as was noted, it shrinks the amount of the base of E&D for the subsequent years. So there are trade-offs there to be made as well. So I think it's a little bit of what the committee desires to do in that regard.
Okay, thank you, John.
So let me propose something that I think offers the most options, and you tell me if I'm wrong. So, what's that? Yes.
So many of them wrong.
So the school committee could vote to increase its budget tonight, which would increase the assessments to the towns. If it has an appetite for us prioritizing this work, it could also tell us, get as much of this stuff done as you can now. If the budget fails at the fall town meeting, then there will be a shortfall that will show up in the spring, because we're starting the budget right now, we have money, it's the end of this budget, we'll run out of money. That would be the time that they could exercise an option of going into E&D or going into some other funding source to make up for the fact that the funds that they would be committing to telling us to go ahead now didn't come through at the town meeting. Does that make sense? Yes.
I'm in favor of that approach. I'm going to clarify, because maybe I heard it wrong. John Quinn, you said don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so don't put it as a package. I think Don said put it as a big package. Those two different points right there?
No.
Or I hear that wrong?
No, the truck, whatever, the switches and the repair should be separate. I'm just saying that in presenting it to the town, it's a package that is already put together. You got 50,000 for expense, you got 40, those are already paid, those are already not paid for, but they're already funded. And you get the 105,000, which is already funded. And now we're adding 86,000 to create almost a $300,000 fund to do the maintenance at the school. So I'm saying that when we presented at town meeting, we presented a more comprehensive package on the maintenance part. The truck and the switches are totally different subjects.
Thank you.
I'll take the last comment, and we're going to move ahead and vote. Go ahead.
Well, my only point was that you're obligated to present an omnibus number. And I go back to Dr. Tirabasi's point is that we did get a little bonus from the state. The money we're talking about to do these things, which both John and Doug say are necessary for quality of life at the middle school, can be accommodated by the extra money, leaving more money over. If you're passionate about getting the truck and the switches done, keep the assessment at that. If you increase, the potential is that both will go down because people might be upset about the extra, oh my gosh, we're paying 20% of something we don't own. It's a real thing and it's a danger, and you're rolling the dice with that. That's my only caveat to you all. Go with what I think you saw. The town meeting was pretty okay. Come back in the fall, we'll have free cash money. We probably can pay for our part of the switches and the truck which plows the regional high school.
So I know the assessment comes in as a letter with a single dollar amount, which I don't think any of us like, but is the way it's written, it has to be. But when presented at Hamden Town Meeting, these items would likely be broken apart into separate warrants.
But it's still voted as one number. That's
Correct, but if only some things pass and the others don't, we can vote to decrease the assessment afterwards.
You could, but again.
Which is exactly what we did this year.
We have fall town meeting is so we have the final number, we can go and set the tax rate, which is the same thing that Wilbraham does. And if we're going back and that waiting, it pushes everything back on our end. And in Wilbraham, to closing the books and getting ready for the tax rate. We don't want to be West Hampton, which last year went over 3/4 with an unset tax rate because they couldn't get their financial act together.
If we fund it all from E&D, then that would be less money to contribute to the assessments for the next year's budget, which I think we're all worried about as well.
All right, so do we have enough information to vote?
Yeah, I do.
What's your recommendation?
We need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve increasing the town assessments to accommodate both the capital items, the truck and the switches, and the middle school maintenance. Yeah.
So it's the operating and capital budgets.
Although I suspect Hamden will pay for it as a capital, and Wilbraham will pay for it from free cash.
So if I could, we'll have to take very specific motion language for adjusting the budget. But if you want to have this as a sort of bellwether for the next vote, you can. But I mean, there's very specific language in it to articulate the actual assessments we're going to then send to the towns.
Well, this is in your, what we're talking about is in your memo here, correct? We have the.
Well, we were on the agenda item of the middle school, interim improvement plan, but that would be going back to which is part of why I wanted to do that first, because then we can go back to the reconsideration of the fiscal 27 budget. So there's a separate memo for that, which has that promotional language in it, and it's constructed, if the chair doesn't mind. I don't know that you necessarily need to, if you wanted to, under the interim improvement plan, you could accept the plan as it's stated, just as a plan. That would be one thing. You wouldn't have to, though, necessarily. But if we go to the, I'll find where it is in the packet here.
But these aren't in your memo here, these aren't the numbers for the middle school improvement plan.
So,
we're only doing part of it right now.
hold on. Right, thank you. So, in this memo from your packet, the operating budget is adjusted to, the overall operating budget is adjusted at $59,756,340, which is $85,719 higher than it was. And so the assessments are appropriately, for that operating budget, the assessments for that part tweaked a little bit. And then for the capital, that's representing the two projects that were approved by you back in March. And so, if you're looking to ask both towns to, if you're asking to adjust the assessment to include the middle school plan, it's adjusting the operating budget. If you're in the capital budget, adjustment is separate motion by you all, but nonetheless, that's in alignment with the conversations that that Hammond had at its town meeting, and it's already funded for Wilbraham. They don't have to take any action on that second half, but that would be that's the formal sort of vote language you need to have to take the actions. If you decide that you don't want to put the middle school plan into the operating budget,
Then we only act on the capital.
then you only have on
And
the
we don't adjust the operating budget.
Correct.
Is that what John, is that what you recommended, John? Because, I mean, listening to the people from Hamden, it's not putting it together, but I think everybody here wants to do the improvement. I think everybody in this room cares about the health of the kids. So the question is how to get the money through town meeting to get to the end result. So if the best way is to keep it separate, you know, we have to support that and then get the money later or spend the money, you know, from E&D and then get a recovery later, or go for everything now and then risk having it go down to the peaks.
That was my recommendation. It was ask for the appropriation. And then, you know, my further clarification was if you direct us to go ahead and do the work, you know, we'll have a fiscal problem that we have to deal with later on in the fiscal year if the vote fails. But there's a chance that it'll pass. And the only way you can create opportunity for it to pass is to ask for it.
And what about if they said it goes, the truck and all that goes down and you have, then what happens? So we're going to lose the truck and the switches and everything too?
Right, there wouldn't be appropriated funding for that either. So yes, those projects would be delayed or deferred to another round of appropriation.
Point of order, if I may, quickly here. Did Mr. Flynn before, during public comment, or did he say that because the original assessment was already sent, and we've already amended it once and amending it again, that it doesn't need the full period to be presented? He did say that, right? So, and then the fall town meeting would be November, I would assume? When is it?
I think they were talking about October for theirs.
Okay, October.
But you have to, the thing is, there are certain, you call a special town meeting as a select board, there is, by virtue of your bylaw and also state law, a certain lead time to set the warrant, which is sometimes not very long. It depends on the town a little bit. So it has to be, you need to get the request to them by at least that point in time so that they can put a warrant article on and have the language correct for the warrant for the meeting. So it doesn't have quite as the time horizon as the annual town meeting has,
right.
But at the same time we need to know what those are. Right. And similarly for, depending on your choice here, if we adjust the operating assessment, you've got to meet the same sort of deadlines for Wilbraham's town meeting, which they indicated to us their deadline for warrant language is kind of middle of August. So they're going to, because I think they're going to try to have their meeting a little sooner than perhaps Hampton is. So that's a piece of this as well.
Michelle, what do you recommend, being that you're from Hampton also in close contact with everybody?
So I was asking, what is the best way for us to separate so we don't jeopardize losing everything? Because I'm in support of the improvement plan, but I also know that we do need the other capital items that we were requesting.
Right. So I think that the thing is this, is, the towns are in control of how they place, questions of appropriation in the warrant. So they could put it as a single item, or they can separate them into pieces. If they separate them into pieces and then don't approve them all, that puts us out of balance with what you guys have approved as the budget. So you would have to then come back and readjust the budget again, much like we did in May relative to the outcome of town meeting. So that would be the process. I think it's part of it's a question of, what does the select board in each of the towns want to do as far as how they present to town meeting those questions, and the willingness of the school committee to reconsider their budget.
So is that what you recommend doing, Michelle? Separating it?
If, I don't, there's feedback from the audience.
Just a point of information, I would make the point that, as Doug said, they want warrant language by this time. The warrant language typically is not that specific, though, to amounts. You're asking for an article to increase the assessment. The motion would have the actual amount, which would be later in the process, probably before the finance hearing and the advisory hearing. But I go back to Sean's point, you haven't even had a chance for finance to weigh in. Hey, how do you feel about the extra $60,000 out of the Wilbraham budget? Which is, you know, money from Wilbraham. So, I like Doug talking about, could it be separated? An article for capital, an article for increased operating money as well, and maybe, depending on the action of town meeting, the school committee reconvenes and revotes a number that is in accordance with both towns. That's a process that could be done too, right, Doug? Right. So maybe two separate things. We're going to increase the assessment by the capital amount, and we're going to increase the assessment to both towns by the WMS maintenance account, whatever it is. And roll with this.
You're good with that, Michelle?
So as they're written here, Doug, they're separate items. And so if you approve them separately, they can go forward to the town separately. A separate item? Well, because they're different, right? There's capital and an operating, so they'll be separate.
They'll be articulated that way, so when we send the assessment letters to the towns, it will itemize the different pieces. And in my cover letter, I'll articulate the specifics of what's changed relative to, operating, as far as capital. I just mentioned that it was what was approved in March and was not acted on by the town handed at that point. And then the actual, the grand total will also be different. That's ultimately what the town's agreeing to, but they can vote the components at that point. So it will be, and we can make it clear in the letter to the town, which therefore they can use as a framework for their work in setting a warrant, what's what and where are those different pieces.
I'd like to make a motion as.
Do we have the other motions been seconded? Don't we have to either amend the first motion or do we have?
So I'd like to rescind the initial motion because it
Once
was
it's
worded.
been seconded, you can't rescind it.
I'd like to amend the original motion's language to include operating budget, move to adopt an operating budget of $59,756,340 inclusive of the debt service payment for the Minnechaug Regional High School of $1,910,150 for fiscal year 2027 for the Wilbraham Regional School District, and to assess member towns as follows: Hamden, $9,919,905. Wilbraham, $33,162,455.
Is that the number with or without that 85,000?
That includes the 85,000. This is the operating budget. This does not have anything to do with the truck. This is an increase in the operating budget to account for the improvement plan for the middle school.
Correct. That's the plan John talked about.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Questions or discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So motion carries 6-1.
Motion, capital budget, move to adopt a capital budget of $170,000 for fiscal year 2027 for the Hamden Wilbraham Regional School District, and to assess member towns as follows: Hamden, $34,652, Wilbraham, $135,348.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
Now that's with the switches and the truck. That's all that we're talking about here.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. I go back to you with your monthly budget update?
So the first monthly budget update is uneventful, to be honest. You know, what happens in the first few weeks of the fiscal year is we start to do the renewal of software, the encumbrance of things we're anticipating for the whole year, that type of thing. So what you see is a little unevenness across the different categories of the budget, where there's some actual spending. You know, for example, like our retirement for Hamilton County retirement, 100% of it's paid, and we do that partly to save 2%. We have to have the cash on hand to be able to do that, so we're fortunate to be able to make that payment in one fell swoop before the end of July, which saves us a little bit, but it exhausts that component of the budget. There are other things that we've encumbered. So, for example, if you look in some of the special education categories and some of that tuition work in the 9,000 series, where we're encumbering funds for placements out of district, you know, we have adjusted the budget relative to the offset for circuit breaker, but we haven't yet applied the funds to the encumbrances. So the encumbrances reflect the total cost of those things that we think we're going to need to serve those students. But some of that encumbrance will actually be funded from our circuit breaker fund. So as the year progresses, that will improve a bit. It currently looks like it's over budget by, I forget, $700,000 or $800,000. So that's a little disheartening or scary to see in that regard. But that's just an artifact of where we are in the fiscal year at this point. You know, we started to, you know, project out what our health insurance costs are going to be for the staff that we know we have on hand right now. We'll have a segment of staff that we are hiring in the next few weeks, and changes to staff and changes to their insurance, so that number for what's encumbered for health insurance will change over the coming months. But nonetheless, you get a sense of where we're starting for the year, and some of the pieces of the puzzle that you know, get expended right away. Some of those, like I say, software renewals, purchases for the start of the school year, of curriculum materials, that kind of thing, and then encumbrances in anticipation of expense. But then you also see places where our offsets have impacted our budget number, but not our encumbrance yet. So those will moderate over the course of the coming months as we literally start to apply those circuit breaker funds to help us out, or school choice funds, or IDA funds, or whichever, you know, of the offsets that we have. But I'm happy to answer any questions people have about where we are at this point.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Bless you. Okay, MSCA update.
I don't think I included anything in your packet. So two pieces of that. So for our current accelerated repair program projects, we have been assigned a OPM and the designer / architect for those two roofing projects, one at Mile Tree and one at Stony Hill. We've had a visit with them. They've come out, take a look, and they literally climbed up on the roof and walked around and took some notes. We should very shortly receive the OPM contract. It's a much more prescriptive process with the accelerated repair program. So the nature of the contract, the basic frame of well, first, MSBA told us who our OPM and designer were, so they had already done the procurement for that, so we didn't have any process we had to follow there. It was just sort of accepting who we have. They also have templates for the contracts for both of those, and so we'll hopefully the next day or two receive the contract for the OPM. Once the superintendent signs that, then we'll immediately try to get the contract in place for the designer. All of that, plus one or two of the little small things, have to be in place by, I believe it's the 17th of August, for us to kind of stay in the process and keep moving along. But things are progressing the way we expect them to. I have no expectation that we'll have challenges with regard to getting those contracts done. It's really a matter of taking those boilerplate contracts and filling in the blanks, basically. So that's in good order. We heard relative to our core program application, our statement of interest for the core program for the middle school, We hadn't heard anything for a while, and recently this MSBA reached out to us to schedule a, what do they call it, senior program reviewers or project review, forget the name, senior project and program review. So they're coming on campus on the 16th of September. We'll have a few people, like Susan and myself, facilities director, principal, facility staff, et cetera, to kind of go around the building and again sort of walk through and laying of eyes onto the building and posing questions and getting answers. But I think the good news from that is the following: is that the fact that they've said we're going to do this next step means we're still in the process, and we're still in the process of being reviewed and evaluated for inclusion in the core program. So if they weren't going to do that, they would probably notify us and said, thanks but no thanks, try again next year. So we're still, sort of in the running, as it were. They're doing their due diligence part with what we sent them, and then what they'll do when they come in September. Typically, their recommendations of professional staff and MSBA to the board happen typically it's in December when they actually take the votes. They'll make the recommendations and take the votes in December. So I'm anticipating that similar timeline. So, they'll see us in September. There'll probably be hopefully some follow-up conversations, and then they'll either recommend inviting us in or not for the board meeting towards the end of the year. But the good news is we're still in the mix.
Any questions for Doug on the MSBA projects? Okay, next move on to closing student activity accounts. Is a vote on this one?
And so what you've got there is a listing of the student activity accounts for both middle school and the high school. Those are our student activity programs. We did approval of a couple new ones at the beginning of the meeting, but now this is the sort of rest of the list is affords them the opportunity to do fundraising and spend money. And the thing with student activities, the funding is to be spent for the student's purpose. So for the students, they may then choose to, buy t-shirts for themselves, but they also might do things like with their fundraising where they donate. It's their choice of what to do with those resources once they, raise those funds or collect those monies. But this gives you the opportunity to once again authorize their ability to perform those student activity fundraising. Say programs, but activities.
Is there any reason that there would be a benefit to keep these accounts open and available for student use, or are we anticipating that nobody's going to be using these accounts?
So the first one you're approving is the active accounts, I believe. Oh, or are we doing the closing? I'm sorry.
The closing.
The closing of the accounts, those are ones that are no longer active, and I believe the balance has been zeroed out. I'm sorry, I read down too far on the agenda. Forgive me for that. These are accounts that are either no longer active, and therefore the funds are no longer need to be utilized. In the case of like the class of 2024, we are actually obligated to give the money to the class. They then have to go and take that money and use it wisely, but it's for their purposes. It's their money, so they can keep it. We can't keep it. In the other cases, I believe those clubs are inactive and haven't been active for a while, and so we usually wait a while before we completely close out an account to make sure that there's no interest in resuming the club.
The balance is all show is zero, is that?
Right. Right.
There's no money to give them.
Right. If there were money, we have a discussion about how to essentially distribute it potentially amongst other clubs, but since there are no balances, then we don't have to worry about that.
Does the motion need to say the account numbers and names and?
I don't believe so. You can just reference the memo.
Okay.
Yep.
May I have a motion?
Motion to close the student activity accounts in the memo.
Questions or discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. So now we'll continue on with approving the new student activity accounts.
Since Doug already talked about it, can I make a motion to approve the new student activity accounts?
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Michelle, can I just jump in for one quick second? And this is not something that requires a vote, and I know it's not on the agenda. I was at Job Lots today, and I was spending some of the crazy deal money that I have, and a woman behind me in line, when I took out my wallet, saw my school committee ID, and she said, "Oh, I've been looking for a teacher for 45 minutes, because I'm getting like a couple $100 worth of stuff, and I can't get the 40% deal, but I'd want to give it to you guys so you can give it to your committee." And I was like, oh, I asked the cashier and the manager were like, yeah, go for it. Do you have the ID? So it's an attorney from Chicopee. I don't know if she really wanted me to say her name or not, but I told her that publicly I would just give this $77.32 to give to the superintendent for you to use as you choose. And I'm only doing this so that she doesn't think I'm like pocketing it or anything like that. If you could pass this down to John. And I thought that was just so nice of her, and it was nice of Job Lots to let it happen. And I recommend any teacher to go down there. I guess if you spend over $20, it's 40% you get back.
And I'm only going to publicly say, I'm not accepting this personally. We'll make sure that all this money is used for the district, because it's above the amount that I can legally accept.
But that's what it's for. It's for the district. It's not for you. Yeah. Thank you.
Along the topic of back to school, something I just wanted to point out. So Massachusetts tax-free weekend is August 8th and 9th. Is there any chance that all the back-to-school shopping lists will be circulated to the families in the school district before the tax-free weekend, which is intended to assist the families with back-to-school shopping?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I guess I would say it would be great, maybe an email to encourage, maybe if they can get those shopping lists out to the kids. I don't know, do the kids even know who the teachers are yet? Because that hasn't even gone out yet. But I bet Lisa.
But I actually do not, but, but I can check with the principals to see what lists have gone out. Often it's grade level lists, not specific teacher lists, and they try to post them earlier.
I can remember when I had younger kids, the list came out after tax-free weekend some years, and I was just like, oh well.
Well, and, you know, there's always, Target always has this, you know, great deals, and you can get thousands of notebooks and folders and things for small money. So I will check in on that and get back to you.
Well, I know as a parent of two middle schoolers, the middle school is
I was going to say, I'm not in here. Okay, we do not have anyone here for public comment unless you are interested in making public comment this evening. Thank you. So we're going to continue with the subcommittee updates. I'm guessing this will go quickly. Curriculum subcommittee.
No update.
Okay, planning committee, nothing to report at this time. Finance, operations, and technology subcommittee.
We've not had a meeting, but I'm gonna communicate with her, and I think we need to have a meeting end of August, beginning of September, and invite reps from the towns so that we have an opportunity to talk to them about the increases in the assessments and stuff, and they can bring them back to people.
Feedback, collaborative representative, Lisa.
No update.
Negotiation subcommittee. Nothing to report at this time. They are ongoing. Policy subcommittee, Mike.
As we haven't reorganized yet, does anyone else want to do the third readings? I'm happy to, but my eyes aren't good enough to read very well. All right, so we have several policies up for third reading, and this I'll be looking for a motion, potential motion to approve and vote. ECAB, access to buildings and grounds. EA, bus driver examination and training. And these full policies or edits to policies are in your packet. If you have any questions, just ask me. I know you're new, so you didn't hear the first two. DN, fiscal management, disposition of surplus items. JFBB, school choice. KBG, parent advisory council, PACS. JKAA, physical restraint of students, time out, seclusion, and physical restraint of students. JLCD, administration
self-administration of medications, JL, CDC, self-administration, and self-carry of medication.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
The only thing I'll say is that in terms of the restraints in class, I did go to the administrative retreat, and there was a lot of new information given to that. Does that affect the, they clarified a lot, so it was quite different than what we understood at the time we talked about last spring. So does that affect that? No.
No, it doesn't, because the way in which that clarification came about was through an FAQ, which defined the term seclusion. We were operating with a policy that talked about seclusion, not necessarily knowing what seclusion meant, but now we know what it means.
It's quite interesting.
So the thing that we put towards MASC for the resolution, is that still valid or is it no longer valid, John?
I would say that continued clarification and guidance from the department would be welcome.
Okay, thank you.
And on that subject, again, I can't let it slide. Quite frankly, in our middle school, we don't have the space to do what they say we have to do. And I'm sure in some of our elementary schools, we don't have the staff. We're just already busy doing something to separate the child. So it doesn't appear to me to be a workable situation. I'm sick and tired of DESE passing regulations that hold the weight of law with no funding. And I just can't let it slide without saying that.
Yeah, I think that's a frustration that a lot of educators feel. And I would agree, I think what became apparent in the seclusion definition that was given is that there are very few public schools in Massachusetts that I think have the space to do the kind of activities that are really meant by seclusion. They're talking about rooms with video monitoring of students that can be locked, or rooms that could have two-way mirrors where students are locked in. I mean, I've never seen that in any public school. Those are really regulations that were written for different types of schools than what typically happens in a public school. So I think, if we knew that from the beginning, I think there probably would have been a lot less angst about these regulations.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Anything to report on the LPPEC Corporation?
For my last report, nothing to report.
Okay, so we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion. Okay, so the motion carries 6-0.
Do we want to be?
Yep.
Okay.
So there was a donation, and the school committee is approving to accept the donation of $1,500 from the Walker family to the music department at Green Meadows. So thank you. So we will continue with the superintendent's update.
Thank you. Let me begin with the enrollment report, which is in the back of your packet. As of July 29th, the enrollment stood at 2,773 students. I always take that number with a grain of salt because it takes a little while for the kindergarten and preschool numbers to solidify. So the July number, even the August number, I think tends to be a little bit unreliable with respect to pre-K and K. However, I do think the enrollments for other grade levels are more reliable. We can anticipate that middle school is going to be tighter this year based on these numbers. That's due in part to the return of 8th grade ICP students from Minnechaug. You can also anticipate that Minnechaug will have fewer students this year, also in part because of the return of ICP students from Minnechaug to the middle school, and the fact that last year's graduating senior class was particularly large, being replaced by an incoming group of 9th graders that are smaller. We still have 4 school choice seats open that we're looking to fill, so on TV I'll make that pitch. The other pattern of note is that the so-called bubble class that's been moving through Green Meadows is in grade 5 for the upcoming year, so that is sort of enrollment aberration that will move on to the middle school next year as well. Moving on to our equity improvement plan, I've included the 25-26 school year bullying report in your packets. It's a 1-page memo. From my perspective, the most concerning manifestation of bullying in our district continues to be identity-based bullying, specifically bullying based on a student's racial or ethnic identity, which is a component of all but 3 substantiated acts of bullying that took place in our district last year. Since we began disaggregating the data for both the targets of bullying and the aggressors, we've noted that this behavior overwhelmingly involves male students and or students with disabilities, both as the targets and as the aggressors. Digging a little deeper into that data from this year, we found that about 1/5 of the students who were identified as aggressors in an investigation of bullying also showed up as targets in other incidents that took place this year. That may be a shift reflected in the data table. If you take a look at the table, when we started collecting this data in 23-24, there were slightly more targets and aggressors than there were actual cases of bullying, meaning that some of them were group events with multiple aggressors directing the behavior at a single target, or at an aggressor targeting multiple students in the same act. Last year, there were slightly fewer targets and aggressors than there were acts of bullying, meaning that the same students were involved as targets and or aggressors in multiple events. Moreover, as I said, about 20% of the students in the list of aggressors were also in the list of targets. So based on this, we plan to more directly target our bullying prevention and intervention services for next year. We've begun a discussion of framing our next iteration of active bystander training specifically through the lens of the needs of students with disabilities and male students, who are the ones most likely to engage in and or be targeted by bullying. We also plan to prioritize trauma-informed mental health support for students who have been targets of bullying, with the understanding we now have that they are more likely to become aggressors and other targets of bullying, so that we can disrupt the cycle of harm before it perpetuates. So that's where we're hoping to go, bullying in the next year. You know, it's disappointing to see that this continues to be something we struggle with as a district. Disappointing to see that it continues to have a particularly racial component in our district. And as someone who identifies really as a special educator, really disappointing for me to see that it is really students with disabilities who are perpetuating it and who are being targeted by it almost exclusively. But we will keep working on it. And now, for another update, this is an update also on our equity improvement plan. You know, at the last meeting I had shared with you our theory of change, which is one step in our equity improvement plan. The next step in our equity improvement plan is using that theory of change to inform our professional development plan. And so I'll give the remainder of my time to Lisa Curtin to explain how we plan to do that this year.
Thank you, Dr. Provost. Before I get started, I'm happy to report, Dr. Giavassi, that Mile Tree, Stony Hill, and Sewell Road all have their supply lists for grade levels up on their websites. Green Meadows, I did not see it there, and I'm sure it's on Principal Moberg's list of things to get up there ASAP. So.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That's awesome.
No problem. So you do have in your packet the guidance that I'm going to speak to today, and you may want to look at it just because it does have the visual that our DEIB committee created to show the theory of change and what is guiding our work for this year. So just might help ground your thinking a little bit. So one of the action items in the Equity Improvement Plan is to embed our theory of action and vision of equity into all professional development. Recent contract negotiations reduced professional development days by 2.5 days for this coming year, and budget cuts eliminated instructional coaches and curriculum coordinators. So as a result, professional development will look different this year. It will be entirely building-based and designed and delivered by school administrators and their teams. To support administrators in aligning their plans with the HWRC theory of change, Superintendent Provost created this guide. This guidance will help to support the action item and provide documentation of the efforts that happen throughout the year at all of the schools. So the first step is to identify the root or the pathway gap. Often our principals, regularly, it's their practice to identify some data point that helps decide what they will be working on in professional development. So the guidance asks them to examine the data and then determine which part of the visual path is currently blocked. So the first example says, are student outcomes stagnant because of variable instructional quality? The target is inclusive roots. You can see that in the middle of the visual. Access to resources is one item. Equity and opportunity is another item. So what does the data, where does the data bring us in our theory of change visual? Step 2 asks principals to explicitly name the alignment on their agendas, because we want to make sure that we're engaging teachers and paraprofessionals in understanding where this falls in our theory of change and how we're working on it throughout the year. So we're asking that they make the intentional connection to the theory of change on staff-facing agendas, slide decks, sign-in sheets, and to use the icon or header that comes from our visual, so it makes that clear connection. We certainly don't want anyone to feel like it's another ad, it's a different extra thing we're asking people to do. It's just the work we're doing with the lens of our theory of change and our equity. So an example would be today's session, scaffolding complex texts for English learners, the theory of change alignment, inclusive roots, access to resources, and equity opportunities. So that visual of the roots in the middle. And then step 3 is to select and adapt professional development strands. And you can see the example, the first example listed. The matrix below identifies representative professional development strands anchored in our theory of change. So the theory of change is inclusive roots, then those core theory of change components that are all of those, the roots and the branches that come out from the tree in the center, access to resources, equity and opportunities, etc. And then the professional development focus and strategic intent focus on PD aimed at ensuring every classroom delivers high quality tier 1 instruction, etc. The last column would be what the building is going to actually do for the professional development. So taking all of this into account, then what is the professional development? Could be training teachers on universal design for learning. Could be training them to access historically marginalized student groups to advance coursework. So showing the through lines, the work, the professional development work we're doing, and how that goes right back to our theory of change. So I think it's a really helpful, guidance for principals to start putting into their practice right from the get-go on their first professional development, their first building meetings, and it can help to just hold all of the work that they're doing together throughout the year. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Lisa?
Yes, Lisa. So how confident are you? I mean, we had the way that we did things and you had a team specifically for this. Now you're having to put this on to the buildings and to the administration that already have other things going on, but they still have you, right?
Yep.
So,
They do.
yeah, so I just wanted to ask, like, how are you feeling about this solution?
Well, I think this is something that I think whether or not we were reducing coaches and professional development days, we would still, principals are in control of curriculum planning meetings, team meetings, so we would still want them to be identifying theory of change regardless of that piece. In terms of not having instructional coaches, curriculum coordinators at the middle school, it is going to be a serious hit on our principals. They are very capable instructional leaders and they work very hard, and being an instructional leader is one piece of their job. They are dealing with, being managers, operations, finance, they're doing all of the things. And sometimes instructional leadership gets pushed down on the priority list because you have a leak in the roof, you have to take care of it. You have a bus issue, you have to take care of it. You have students and parents that need your attention, you've got to prioritize that. So it's going to be really challenging for our elementary principals for sure. And I'm here to support them. I'll be meeting with them throughout the year and providing whatever professional development support I can personally provide. But there's some stress out there with how we can do our best with that.
If I can just sort of tag along, and it's not only the personnel, it's also the time. We've even if you had all of the staff who we previously had assisting principals to think through and develop high-quality professional development activities for their staff, which we don't have this year. We don't have the time to do it. We have very little time to try to increase the professional skills of our teachers this year, and that's going to show up. It's just going to be a struggle. I think you have to say that.
No, it will be a big struggle, and I think what's discouraging is how much work principals, coaches, teachers, paraprofessionals put into the professional work that we were doing. And we were feeling we were working hard, but feeling really successful in the progress that we're being made, and looking at our scores and looking at finding those areas to tackle next. And it's really discouraging to not even have the time. Their principals will be using early release time for the bulk of the professional development CPT meetings. Those are 40 minutes start to finish. That's probably 30 minutes in real time. Half days are not really half days. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes. There's not a lot of professional development that can be accomplished then. So the time is going to be a real stretch. The support from personnel is going to be really sorely felt.
Can you please keep us apprised of the situation, as we go forward into this year? Because I think the knowledge of the results of these decisions, I think can help us when we go back into budget season, when we go back into negotiations. We need to know what the impact was on the district by those things. So in case we get confronted with making those same decisions again, we have the information to know what the results were.
Sure, happy to do that. I think one thing a principal said to me already is something's got to give.
Yeah.
We won't be able to do everything that we were doing before. So I'll give you an update on what we're able to do and what we're still hoping to fit in.
We need to know the pain points too, so please, thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Lisa? All right, thank you. We do have a need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with HWEA or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. HWEA Unit C, contract. MIAA, demand letter response.
So move.
Second. Okay. Just our next meeting is August 20th, 2026. I believe it's at 5:30. It's going to be here in the IRC. We will not be returning to regular session. We will be adjourning an executive session. So we will do roll call. Tim?
Yes.
Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yep.
Rich?
Yep.
Mike?
Yep.
Myself? Yes. We're now moved to executive session, 8:14 PM.